everybody, welcome to part 2 of this short video tutorial series. In part 1 we looked at how to create a web page file and store it on our server. We then looked at how to connect that web page to a database. Okay, let me remind you, the file that we stored on our server. Now remember, our server is called localhost. It could be facebook.com, it could be gmail.com, but in the XAMPP environment, our virtual server is called localhost. So we're going to contact the server. Now on that server, there is a folder called food orders, and in that folder, there is a file called data.php. This is from part 1 of this tutorial series. So my client device, my computer, is going to request this file from the server. Let's request it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now let's just remind ourselves where that file is being stored. So, of course, I've turned on my servers. I'm going to go into the application folder, and the magic folder is htdocs. This is where all of our server files are going to be stored. Up to you how you manage those files. I've created a subfolder for this project called food orders, and that's where I'm storing my data.php file. Okay? Now this is data.php, and if you remember, in the last tutorial, we created a block of PHP. It starts there and it finishes there. It's one block of PHP with some PHP variables which we're using to help us create a new connection to a MySQL database. And this variable is very important because later we're going to use this variable, which is connecting to the database, to help us run a query on that database. Okay? And later still, we're going to look at the result of that query and display the results dynamically in the body of a web page. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at in today's tutorial. Okay, so let's start to think about the query. What I'm going to do first is go back to XAMPP. Let's open up the application and go into phpMyAdmin. There's my database. This is the table that I'm working on at the moment. Let's just see if I've got a autosave query. Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm going to select these 4 fields, 1, 2, 3, 4, from the table where the delivery time is less than or equal to 30. So we're looking for quick delivery times, and we're sorting them in order of in ascending order. And we're limiting the result by 10 records. I only want to see the top 10. So we're trying to find the top 10 quickest delivery time orders. Okay. I'm just going to copy that SQL, and I'm just going to see if it works. Yay! It works. Okay. Now, how can I get this result into a web page? The first thing I need to do is run that query, and PHP is going to help me. Now, a classic strategy is to create a PHP variable, SQL, and use that variable to store the result of the query. Not the result, sorry. To store the query. Okay, and here is the query that we're going to be running. Okay. Now I'm just going to explain something as well. When I copied this across from XAMPP, it includes these funny quotation marks. But actually, in your web page, you don't need them. And just to satisfy you that that is true, I am just going to delete all of them. So just give me a moment. Let's just get rid of them from the web page. They're not necessary. And let's just see if that works. Now that we've organized our query here using this variable, we need to run the query using our connection variable and grab the result. So to grab the result, let's create another PHP variable, and let's use our connection variable to run a query. So we're going to use a function called query. Okay. So hey connection, could you run a query for us? And the query that I want you to run is this query here. I've stored it in a variable. So let's just use the variable to help us organize this. Now to see if that works, what I'm going to do, a little trick, I'm going to echo the number of rows that query produces. Okay. And let's see if that works. Hopefully this is going to be echoed onto the web page. So let's save that and refresh the page. Yes! Do you see that 10? That's the echoing that's going on. Okay? So 10 rows or records were produced when we ran this query using our connection, and we're storing the result of that query in this variable. And apparently the result has 10 rows. Now that we've got a result, we can start to decide how we're going to display that result in the body of our web page. Notice we're doing this dynamically. PHP is going to help us do this. Okay, so let's do it. We need to loop through all of the rows that are in that result. So to loop through the result, I'm just going to use a while loop. Okay, so there's the structure of a while loop. I'm going to create another helper variable. And let's just type this out. I'll try and explain what's going on here. I've done this so many times that I can memorize it, but you don't need to. You can always go and do some research on how to loop through the result of an SQL query in PHP, because that's really what I'm doing. What we're doing is, we're saying, hey result, I want you to grab the latest row. Now remember there were 10 of them, but this is going to grab the latest row, and I'm just going to assign that to a variable to help me process the rows as we loop through them. That's all we're doing here. So now that I'm grabbing each row, I can use this variable to process the current row. So for example, I'm going to echo the current row using my helper variable here, and I want to look at one of the fields in that row. What field shall we look at? Let's look at the cuisine type. I'm just going to copy that, and I'm just going to put that inside those quotation marks. So as we're looping through each row, let's look at the cuisine type of the current row that we're processing. So let's save that and refresh. Yes, it works. Now, can I take this data and echo it into like an HTML tag? For example, I want to put that into a p tag. Whoops. I want to put this data inside a p tag. Well, we can do it, but this is data, and we need to put these p tags into quotation marks. And to fix the data into those, between those quotation marks, we need to use the dot operator. Now that might take a little bit of getting used to, but we've got some HTML, which goes in the quotation marks, then we've got some data, so PHP data, and then we're finishing the HTML. That's how that works. So let's save that and refresh the web page. Yes, brilliant. Okay. Actually, what I'd like to do is put all of this data into a table. Okay, now let's just take a quick look at how to generate a table using HTML. W3 schools HTML tables. Okay, so we need to start with a table tag, finish with a table tag, and then we're going to design table rows. Here's a table row. And inside those table rows, we've got data cells showing us the data that we want to go into that row. Okay, so we're going to be generating rows. Okay, so let's have a go and see if we can figure that out inside our HTML here. So the first thing we want to do is open up a table tag. This is not done dynamically. The dynamic thing here will be generating these table rows. This is not dynamic. We just need to start with a table, and when we finish the PHP, we want to close the table. Okay, so open the table, close the table, and in between, we want to echo tr and these tds, and then close the tr. So let's have a go at this. I'm just going to delete that for a minute. Echo. First bit of HTML is the table row. That's that bit there. In fact, let's do the next one. Echo. Let's close that table row. So that's the row. And inside the row, we're going to echo. We need a TD. Then we need our data. Now, what was the first one? City. And then we want to close that TD. So that's our first TD, right? That's our first data cell within the row. Now we've got 4 of those. So I'm just going to copy that. 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 now. The first one is city. The next one, let's just copy them. Cuisine type. The next one is order value. And the next one is delivery time in minutes. Okay. So every time we visit a row, we're generating a TR, which is a new table row, and we're putting, for each row that we visit, the contents of each field from our query result. The city field, the cuisine type field, the order value field, etc. And then we close the row, so that's one row done, and then we'll do it, and then the next row, we're going to make another one. And then another one, there'll be 10 rows. And when the while loop is finished, the PHP has done its work, don't forget to close the table tag. That's what we're doing down here. That always happens. We need to make sure we do that. So let's save that and see if it works. Oh, the page isn't working. I bet you that's because we've got an error somewhere in our... Could be because we need to finish with these. I'm not sure. Let's just make sure we're doing this correctly. Let's save that again and refresh. Yes, that was the problem. Wow. Okay. All right. Okay, that's quite a lot to absorb in one tutorial. But let's see if we can figure out how to connect to a database table, run a query, and take the result of that query and do something with the result in our HTML by creating some dynamic HTML. Have a go, see if you can get it working.